Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Technology, Art, Green, and Sustainability, SVTAGS. Today I'm really honored to have a gal with me who's been a family therapist for many, many years and a book author, Alexandra Kennedy.
Hi, Heather.
Welcome. I'm so happy that you're here and really excited to hear about what you've been doing. Tell us a little bit about your history and your background, a little bit of your biography, what you did before and where you came from.
Well, I was born actually on the East Coast. My father was in the Marine Corps, so I traveled to many places. I lived in Salt Lake City, I lived in Hawaii, I lived in Southern California. By the time I was in 5th grade, I'd already been in 14 schools. So I had a very, kind of malleable, portable childhood, let's say. My father retired as a general, and he plays an important part in terms of how my career kind of unfolded, so that's why I'm mentioning that.
So were your parents both East Coast folks then
No,
originally?
no, actually no. Well, my mother was from the Midwest and my father was from the East Coast and then came to California. We've been in California for many years. I went to UCSC and, well, I went to high school in San Francisco and went to UCSC where I met my husband. We've been married for 43 years.
Wow.
Still very much in love.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. And after I graduated from college, where I majored in psychology, I went to graduate school and was working at the Santa Cruz Counseling Center, Community Counseling Center, and became a therapist in 1975. Went into private practice. And so I've been in private practice now for 39 years. Amazing profession because it constantly grows. And I don't ever see myself retiring, for example. You just get better as a psychotherapist.
Well, let's pull up the first slide. You're from Santa Cruz, which is
Yes.
one of my favorite places. This is one of the, I think this is Natural Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to pull that down. And so that's where your practice is. And
Yes.
tell us about your practice and what it is then that you do.
Well, I'm a psychotherapist, so I see individuals, families, couples, children in all different kind of situations, life transitions. The area of specialty for me is grief. And I kind of came to the field of grief through Stephen Levine used to live in Santa Cruz. And when he was giving his first death and dying retreats in Santa Cruz, I attended those.
And when was that?
That was back in 1998? No, wait. 2000.
Somewhere around
Can't
there.
remember. Yeah, somewhere in there.
98, 2000
Okay.
something, yeah.
Anyway, had a lot of training in death and dying, and also had dealt with those kinds of issues in my psychotherapy practice. But it was when my father was dying that I realized it really brought me to my knees.
And was he in his 80s when he passed?
No.
Or
He was
70s?
77, and he was someone who he had been in the World War II and in the Korean War. Never talked about death. Never talked about he lost many of his comrades in war, and his brother had died in the war as well. And his mother had grieved her whole life over the loss of that son. Never resolved it, and it was a huge issue for my father because my father was kind of overlooked. So it was because of that generational grief, which is something that I really see as an important kind of topic, that I realized that I had to be the one to speak about loss and grief and to learn how to deal with grieving my loss of him. And so that's where I launched into becoming, a specialist in the area of grief.
Now, was your mother still alive when
Yes.
he passed?
Mother
and
was
is she
still
still
alive.
alive now?
Yes.
So,
Well, no, she died at 95.
Oh, she lived
So,
a long
yeah,
time
yeah,
then.
she lived a long
So
time.
she lived past him at least
Yes.
10, 15, 20 years?
And her death was very different. My father's death was much more difficult because, it's very difficult when someone is dying, they don't want to talk about the fact that they're dying.
Right.
So you can't deal with your unfinished stuff, you can't say goodbye, you can't, bring those things up. So in that process, I began keeping a journal and writing and taking daily time to just kind of deal with my grief and just opening to whatever might come to help me through that. And out of that writing, I began to share that, and that developed into a book. And
so I'm going to pull up the next slide too, because I think I'm not sure if this is in Santa Cruz, but this is you at a book talk or signing?
Book signing.
A book signing in Santa Cruz?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's at Santa Cruz in the back.
Yes.
Pull that down. And you probably have done many, many book talks. Going back again to how long you've been a therapist. So 1975?
1975.
Actually, before that, right?
Yes.
You worked for somebody else and then became your own?
Yes. Worked at the Santa Cruz Community Counseling Center and then went into private practice in 75.
Is that still around too, the Santa Cruz?
No, it's kind of morphed into, different agencies and then went into my own practice and I've continued with that all this time. And then
so besides the grief counseling,
right.
you have done counseling with families over different situations.
Yes.
Individuals probably divorced, different things.
Yes, yes. A lot of family issues and life transitions particularly. I love working with children as well. Yeah.
And that's in your own, do you have other people working with you in your practice?
No, it's just me.
Just you,
It's just me, yeah.
And it's probably in Santa Cruz proper then?
SoCal, it's in the SoCal Hills, lovely kind of rural setting in a garden. It's a beautiful place. Clients love to come there just because they're in nature.
And your career path, when you were in college, did you know you were going to be a therapist, or did you,
well, some
people switch majors
I
they
started in English literature, and because when I met my husband, he was in psychology. His mother was a therapist. And so it was kind of like through the influence of them that I began to be curious about that and ended up majoring in psychology. There was also a wonderful teacher named Bob Frager, who started the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology later, who was our major teacher, and he had a huge influence on me. So I became interested in psychology and then took that up, got my master's at University of Santa Clara. And then all the hours that it requires to become a therapist.
Which, getting the master's at Santa Clara is a little different than it was probably, I don't know what year you got your master's, but I have a couple of friends who've gotten their business master's there, and it's like, okay, well, how are you going to pay for this debt now?
I know.
Because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
So your decision to start writing was based on, the first book was called?
Well, I've always loved writing, and I've kept a journal, and this book kind of evolved naturally. I wasn't writing it for a public, I was writing it for myself and then sharing it, and that's the way a lot of times people end up writing their books. It just happened that the book, as I had written it, because I wrote the whole book before I even put it out to any publishers, ended up on the desk of a publisher at HarperCollins, Harper San Francisco, and his mother had just died. So the book resonated with him. He then took it on and championed it and took it through the system, and so it was published, called Losing a Parent.
And I'm gonna read here. So Honoring Grief, that's this one here. And we can hold it up. I'm not sure if you can get a close-up of that. This is the newest one then?
That's the newest one.
This is the newest.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are How Did I Miss All This Before? Losing a Parent, The Infinite Thread, Offerings at the Edge. Is that right?
Right.
And now are some of those, isn't there a video series that you did too?
Well, there's a video from one of those books, a small video. But if I follow the sequence, starting with Losing a Parent, that was my first book, and that was dealing with the loss of a parent. Then The Infinite Thread, which was a book that had many more exercises and suggestions, chapters on how to support partners who are grieving, how to support children who are grieving, how to support friends who are grieving, and many exercises and suggestions. One of the areas that I really emphasize that's kind of different from a lot of the other authors in the area of grief is the ongoing inner relationship that we have with someone who's died. And so I use a lot of work with the imagination to foster that relationship. And in that way, people can begin to heal some of the unresolved issues. So then I wrote a book of poetry, which is The Offerings at the Edge.
Okay.
And those just kind of naturally unfolded. And then How Did I Miss All This Before, which is kind of my whole inner journey, spiritual journey that I wrote. which
And
was
were
the
you
book
living
I always
in
wanted
Hawaii
to write.
when you wrote that one?
No.
Okay.
No, but there's a lot about Hawaii in
I
there.
saw some
Yes.
pictures online
Yes.
of you. It looked like you were offering flowers or
Well,
something.
that's I do